So back in like 12th grade, I was a very, very lazy guy and I didn't want to study at all. I would sit at home and kind of just go through the motions of the day. I'd play video games, I'd scroll on my phone, I'd go out with my friends, I'd eat food, I'd go to the gym kinda, and I had a pretty okay day. But the one thing that I didn't do was studying, even though I deeply wanted to, right? I wasn't this guy that had no interest in studying. I wanted to. Like, I had this big passion of like getting good grades and getting a really nice score so I can show my parents and be proud of. But then, even though I had that much passion, I just never got to doing it. And the only reason why that is because I just didn't know how to. I watched dozens, and I mean dozens of study videos on flashcards or spaced repetition, rereading the textbook, writing your notes in a different way, brain notes, all these type of things. I made on my own terms too, and try to figure out which one is the most effective one so that I can just pick the best one and then study. But because I was just kind of lazy, I knew that if I tried any one of them, they would work, even though some are better than the others. The point was I just had no motivation to do it. And I want to save you that time, right? In this video, I want to save you that time of me just like scrolling all over the internet and finding out like different study tactics, watching all these different YouTubers. And I'm going to just give you two methods that work for me and still work for me and give me zero anxiety when I'm studying because I know they work. And the only thing left to do at that point is to just repeat them over and over again so that it's in your mind whatever you're trying to study for whatever exam you have. First of all, respect to you, and I'm glad that you're watching this video. So many people just sit on the internet and scroll infinitely watching videos that they don't even like in the first place. So the fact that you're here and you're investing your time into like a short video that's just going to teach you something that's definitely going to be useful in your life shows that you have a little bit of self-respect left in you, and if you keep watching, you might gain more self-respect. If you're liking this video so far, click the subscribe button and like the video. I make videos like this all the time, and I hope that you can join me in this community so that we can keep growing together. So like I said, I was a pretty slow learner, and I would be a very ineffective learner, meaning like I would just take the textbook and just read it over and over again, or I'll try these different methods, and I'd spend so much time trying these new ways of studying that I would just never actually do the actual point of studying and getting it in my brain. I'd spend like 80% of my time just finding the best method. And I feel like a lot of people in many different endeavors of life go through that exact situation, right? If they're starting the gym, they're like, what's the best workout? What's this? What's that? If they're trying to start a new hobby, they start looking at the best ways to go and do that hobby instead of actually sitting down and practicing it. And there are two methods that I've practiced over and over again that I promise you gave me the most benefit ever. The first thing you need to understand is your brain works in a way where it's a muscle. It's essentially still a muscle. The same way your bicep is a muscle, the same way your quads and your chest is a muscle. Your arms are muscles that grow from reps and practice and like tension, like there's some resistance that it has to push through to grow. Your brain is the exact same thing. Now, I want you to imagine, right, just for a second, what are you studying for? Right, you're studying for an exam, sure, right, given. You're studying for an exam, but the way you're studying doesn't match what you're trying to do. Right? If we imagine every bench press that you do, every bicep curl that you do as just practice for the next weight, you would imagine that, okay, if I do 10 kilograms of bicep curls, okay, what I'm doing, I'm just preparing myself for 15 kilograms, and then so on and so forth, right? You're preparing yourself for the same activity, just a little bit harder. But everyone that I know who studies, they study in like a way where they're practicing for the wrong thing. Right? If you imagine an exam hall where you're actually sitting down, the paper's in front of you, everyone's around you, and you're just writing the answers for the questions, you can imagine that like what you're doing there doesn't match how you studied. You studied by rereading notes, memorizing all that stuff, sure. But if you think about it, when you're writing an exam, you're not memorizing anything. You're just there to write down what you remember. So you've never practiced for it. Now, if I tell you what I'm about to say right now, you're gonna relate to it 100%. There have been points in your entire life, maybe 12, 15 years of schooling, where you were studying really, really hard for an exam. Some information sticks, some information doesn't. But the point where you remember the most and it sticks in your mind is when you finish the exam and then you leave the exam hall. For like a week, you remember exactly what questions were there. You remember exactly what answer you wanted to write. And then you just remember it. And you're like kind of pissed because you're like, wait, I studied so much, I didn't remember anything. and I only remember after I finish the exam. That's like a scam. But a lot of people do study the wrong way. They study as if they're going to go to the exam to just reread notes. Because if your studying method is rereading notes, fair enough, right? Because if you go in the exam hall and they tell you, hey, no questions, just reread notes. This is a rereading notes competition. You're just gonna win because you've done that so much. But because the actual exam is the first time people are actually testing themselves, that's why they remember the most. So one of the most effective ways I found to study is literally just test yourself, right? Testing yourself is you deliberately mimicking the exam situation in your mind so that your mind can prepare for it. So you can imagine, let's say you did 30 minutes of studying and you studied like, let's say one chapter, right, for science example. And then instead of, studying for another 30 minutes and then like being like, okay, I have to memorize this, and then you remember and you remember and you remember. Instead of that, you literally just take out like a past question paper, or you get an AI like ChatGPT to make a bunch of questions for you based on the material you learned. And then you sit there, you don't look at the answer or anything, give yourself like a 15-minute timer and answer as many questions that you can. What that's gonna do is your brain is now primed to be like, oh shit, I had to study like 30 minutes ago, and now I have to remember what I just studied. You're putting yourself on the spot to remember. And then let's say you get 3 out of 5 questions right. When you do that, your brain has already done the bicep curls for all 5 questions. Essentially, it's tried to remember, okay, what is the answer for question 1? What is the answer for question 1? I got it. And then you write it. And then the same thing for question 2. And then the same thing for question 3. But then 4 and 5, you didn't remember. Fair enough. Now you know that like your brain has done like the reps. Like in a video game, like when you kill enemies, you get XP. That's literally what your brain has gotten. It's gotten exam XP. So it's gonna be better at remembering the questions that you answered. And the questions that you didn't answer, as in you got wrong or you couldn't remember the answer for, now your brain is primed to find that knowledge. And then you can solve that prime by like going and finding the answer for it, or trying to test yourself again, maybe remembering a little bit harder and then finding it. That friction where you ask yourself the question or you get the questions in front of you and then you remember is what grows your brain's muscle to be better at exams. Now that I said it like this, it sounds like complete common sense, right? Like we've been studying for exams wrong our entire lives because we've been like told to study by like rereading notes and studying for like 8 hours a day, where you just reread all the chapters and you write down the notes in your own little handwriting, thinking that's gonna make you remember it more. The only way your brain remembers is it gets information, and then after a little bit, you force it or you put it on the spot to remember what that information is. Like for example, I tell you that 2 plus 2 equals 4. Let's say you never knew that. 2 plus 2 equals 4. And then I ask you 1 hour later, what did I say? Like, what does 2 plus 2 equals? And you're like, shit, 4. And then you remember. So you got that answer right. So you might think like, oh, you know the answer. But no, that little like 5-second event where your brain is trying to remember it is the best time for you to like, it's the best time for your brain to remember anything and grow, because you're mimicking an exam situation. Now it makes sense why when you're in an exam and then you do the exam, and then after you leave the exam hall is when you remember everything like for a week or two, because that the stakes were high and you had to sit there. You can think of it, there's a couple questions in exams that you've written where you had to just sit there for like 5 to 10 minutes just trying to remember the answer, because you know it's somewhere in your brain, but you just can't seem to get it out of your brain. And then eventually it just comes to you, and then you write that answer down, and then you move on. That's when your brain remembers it the most. You've trained it for the wrong thing this entire time. So your action step from now is to completely change how you study, right? There are 2 things I want you to follow: spaced repetition and testing yourself. These are the 2 things that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. I wish I knew this way before, because I would have been a really great student if I knew this, because at this point it makes it fun. It makes it really, really fun to study. It doesn't make it boring. You study for like half the time. You don't even need to study for like 4 hours. You can study for like 2 or 3 hours a day, where you just use these methods and they will work. So the way I started doing it, because I'm still studying, is when I get a piece of information, let's say I get like, a resource, like a chapter, I see it, I read through it a little bit, and before even like trying to like study it or try to memorize it or try to understand the concept, I go to ChatGPT and I give it the information, like I screenshot the chapter or I copy paste it. And I go to it and I'd be like, yo, just test me on this resource right now. 5 questions, right? 5 or 10 questions. Test me. It could be multiple choice. It could be long answer, short answer. That's up to you. Generally, the harder questions that it asks, the more your brain is going to be primed to remember. That first skim that I did over the chapters, I kind of remember. So it'll give me some multiple choice, it'll give me some short answer, and I'll get a lot of them wrong, and I'll get a lot of them right. It's okay. Because now I know what concepts already click to me, right? Like, for example, if the concepts is like mitochondria and like cells or something, I don't know, science. And I only knew a little bit, so when I read it the first time, the concept already clocked to me. And then I test myself. I know that the answers I immediately got, my brain's already very good at remembering it. Because the difference between me getting asked a question and me answering the question was very little. It was like very, very little. So now I know my brain's already like very good at remembering it. But the questions that I took like 10 seconds for, 20 seconds for, or even longer, that's when it's like, okay, this is the thing that my brain's gonna be primed to learn. And then you can go reread the chapter, and then you can go like get all the information, because now your brain's primed to learn it. And then like 30 or 40 minutes later, instead of just moving on to the next chapter, you go and test yourself again and again. The more you test yourself, the more you're mimicking an exam situation. I want you to imagine this scenario. There's 30 students in an exam hall, you're one of them, right? Now, using this method, out of the 29 other people, for them, the first time they're ever testing themselves, the first time they're here is now. This is the first time they're ever doing the exam. But if you practice the same questions you know are gonna come for the exam, like the chapters and the resources, like 30 times before, it is your 31st time. If you studied it 50 times before, it's your 51st time. And if it's 100, it's your 101st time. Now, you know, if you did something 100 times, the 101st time is like piece of cake, right? It's a piece of cake. It's easy. That's exactly why the students who study but test themselves constantly, the ones who go through past papers and they test themselves on the questions that come there, they do really good. You might have done this, right? You might have went through a past paper in an exam, like, oh, okay, last year's exam, the final answer, and you realize you learned more. That's only because you went through a past paper that had questions, and even if you copied the answer, for a moment, you had to think about what the answer was, instead of just reading the answers from the textbook. I hope this video helped you, and if it really did, click the like button, click the subscribe button. I make videos like this all the time. You can join our community, and if you want to see more videos from me right now, click the subscribe button down there. Click my face next to the subscribe button, you'll see a bunch of videos from me right now. I'll see you guys in another video. Bye-bye.